So, you're excited. You're finally going to get that piercing that you always wanted. Ever since you were 6 years old and you first saw that pop star who had it. And you walk into the studio. You've been saving up money for months. The piercer comes out and he starts talking to you about it. And you tell him what you want. And he takes 2 looks at you and goes, yeah, I'm not doing that. We're going to go into the reasons why. It's Thursday, time for Body Piercing Basics number 9, so stick around. Why would a piercer refuse to do a piercing? Coming up right now. For those who are new to the channel, my name is DaVo. I'm a professional body piercer and have been since 1994. I'm the owner and operator of the Axiom Body Piercing Studio in Des Moines, Iowa. We share space with Skin Kitchen Tattoo. So when I'm talking to you about this, I'm talking to you as a piercer who's been working in the industry for a long period of time, has dealt with thousands upon thousands of clients, and has came across this on a number of times over the years. Has come in contact with this a number of times over the years. Yeah, I think that's right. Anyway, one thing I have to address is why this is coming up right now. I had a client that came in a few days ago and we sat down and talked. She'd been to another studio and the studio refused to do the piercing and kind of gave her a reason that has no factual proof behind it. We've all heard it. If you've been in the industry for an extended period of time, it's if I do that piercing, you will become permanently paralyzed, possibly. A lot of times attributed to piercing the tongue in the wrong spot, or the eyebrow in the wrong spot, or upper ear cartilage, or various other things that supposedly would cause paralysis. And they were unwilling to do it because they're a good guy and they don't want to see you turn into a vegetable. Where these really come from, though there's some kind of speculation that it might have something to do with pressure points, the reality is that they come from piercers not willing to sit down and explain to their clients why that piercing is not a good idea or why they're unwilling to do the piercing at that time. It's much easier to go, yeah, kid, I'd love to do that on you, but, it's going to paralyze you. Then I got other things I need to be doing. Then to sit down and go, okay, here's the risk and here's the issues, and this is why we're not going to do it. So I'm going to go through roughly about 6 different reasons why a piercer may refuse to do a piercing. And I think there's a general misconception amongst most people that the customer is always right. Well, it's difficult sometimes to sit down and go, no, you're not right, and here's why. You hope that by educating them, they'll know the reason why you're refusing to do that piercing or what have you. So let's go through some common ones or some of the ones I've come across on a regular basis. The first one being is that they are not experienced in doing that piercing. Maybe during their apprenticeship that piercing didn't exist, or maybe they just haven't done enough of them where they feel comfortable doing it. Maybe there's something about your anatomy that triggers them and makes them say, I'm not going to be able to give the best results, so I don't want to do it for that reason. There are a number of piercings that I won't do based on that particular reason. A couple male genitals and one female genital piercing that I won't do because I wasn't trained to do them and I don't feel comfortable basically just trying it out on clients and getting paid for it. That just doesn't seem ethically right to me. Plus, they're piercings that we rarely ever get asked to do, so they're not really a big part of our day-to-day piercing. So, if they don't feel comfortable doing the piercing because of their skill level or whatever, they might refuse to do it. The second one, the piercing is really just an experimental or possibly dangerous piercing, or a piercing that has a huge, terrible, bad history of rejection. This is one of the reasons why I won't do dermal implants. I have a video in itself. I wrote a long blog about that. If you go to my website, axiumpiercing.com, there's a long blog in there that will explain it. I can link it in the descriptions maybe. If not, send me an email or post a comment and I'll be happy to give you the link to it. The reason why I don't do those is A, I don't have any experience doing them and I don't feel comfortable experimenting on people. B, there is no easy way for the client to remove the jewelry if a medical emergency comes up or they have a job interview or some type of treatment they need requires them to remove the jewelry. And they do tend to migrate and reject over time. People can swear up and down that they don't, but the reality is because of where you're placing the piercings, they're constantly getting caught and snagged on things. And if they're not flush to the body and they get yanked on, even if they're done correctly, they can start that process of your body rejecting the jewelry. Unlike a piercing where you can kind of dictate how deep the piercing is into the tissue, and there's two sides to it. There's a whole host of other issues to be concerned about, but those are the main ones. And that's why I'll refuse to do single point piercings or microdermals, and I don't foresee me ever offering them in the future. It is not what I got into body piercing to do. The same thing with dermal. There's also some things that I don't feel comfortable doing, like anything that involves dermal punches or scalpeling. I am not a surgeon. I am not a medical professional. I do not do medical procedures. I do body piercing. That involves injecting a needle and putting jewelry in behind it. It doesn't involve any of the other things that are often involved in these more experimental and dangerous type things. There's other things that are just plain bad ideas, like surface-to-surface piercings, piercing your Achilles tendon, chest piercings. I could go on and on and on. All of these things, even though they've been popularized through magazines and TV and etc., are just not good ideas, and for that reason I won't do them. The other thing that I'm concerned about, especially with oral piercings, is the amount of damage that piercing could do potentially to someone's body. So, for example, smileys and frowns, where the jewelry is in constant contact with your gums, can cause damage over a long period of time, more so than a labret piercing or something that's a little further away from the gums, and you can dictate how much contact it actually has. Now, people can debate on that one way or another, but that's a possibility. Another thing would be any tongue piercing not dead center and right in front of that flernum tendon. Piercings off to the side or way to the front increase that contact with gums. They increase that contact with teeth and the bone structure of your mouth. So they're more dangerous. And I do not want to feel like I'm doing something that's going to contribute to someone losing teeth or damaging their teeth in a way that will affect the rest of their life or be very expensive to correct. Number 3. This one, nobody has any control over. It's your anatomy. Some piercings are very anatomy specific. There are good candidates, there are great candidates, and then there are terrible candidates. It comes down to whether or not the jewelry is going to fit into the area comfortably and if there's enough room to safely do the piercing. Tongue piercings, it's a pretty common one. If that tendon on the underside goes all the way to the tip of your tongue, we don't want to pierce it because we can't pierce in that area. You will have all kinds of issues if we pierce back there. Or if we have to do it too far forward, we're increasing that risk of enamel erosion and gum erosion. With some other piercings and other part of the anatomy, like nipples and navels and ears, if the area isn't developed and pronounced enough, doing a piercing, it would be so shallow that your body would probably reject it. So we'll refuse to do it for that reason. Number 4, this is a pretty, not often, but it comes up from time to time. Your mental state is impaired. Now, this can bring up a lot of different subjects that maybe most of us don't really want to talk about. The biggest one being is that you're intoxicated or under the influence of anything that's mind altering or mood altering at the time of the piercing, especially illegal substances or good old-fashioned alcohol. The other thing to be concerned about is whether or not the person has the mental capacity to, in fact, actually make a good decision. This has come up from time to time over the years. I am happy to do those that are mentally impaired as long as they completely understand or have someone with some responsibility involved that can explain it to them clearly and is part of their lives on a regular basis. Even at that point, I'm generally step away. It's kind of, and it comes down to one of those things where involving consent. If you cannot consent to it because you're not sober, if you can't consent to it because you do not understand the risk and complications and the amount of responsibility it is to get the piercing, then I ethically should not do it because you're not giving clear consent. I've also had situations where obviously the significant other was forcing the person or at least strong-arming them into getting the piercing, and they had no interest in doing it or having anything to do with it. I have also stepped back and went, oh yeah, I have to have them alone in the room, and had a long discussion about whether or not they really in fact wanted the piercing. And to kind of smooth things over, I may have lied a little bit about their anatomy, but that's something that ethically I would not have felt comfortable doing. So that's another thing. Number 5, you're underage. That comes down to consent again. There are a number of people out there that will pierce anybody at this magical age. I usually follow what the law says. And in the state of Iowa, you're not legally responsible for your own actions. You cannot sign a contract without a cosigner or be obligated legally to anything until you are of the age of 18, thus the age of true consent and what you're considered to be an adult. Anyone under that age, I require parental consent. So I may refuse to do it because simply you're not old enough. Number 6, and this is another ethical thing, and it is self-governing. At that point in time where you come in, the piercer does not feel like they are capable or in the right state of mind, physical state, etc., to perform that particular piercing correctly. This could be a situation where you show up 5 minutes before the shop closes, after the piercer has done a full day of piercing, and they are just simply wiped out. We all have days like that. Sometimes you come in first thing in the day, at the beginning of the day, and you just don't have that edge. So I think it's important that a piercer, if they don't feel like they're 100% or they can't do something correctly, that they say no. Now, what should you talk to your piercer about when they refuse to do a piercing? Ask them specifically why. Go in and have a discussion. And if you don't believe them, go home, do some research. There's plenty of it out there. Then go talk to another piercer and see if they have the same opinion. Remember always that what we're really trying to do, what my main goal when I talk to my clients when they come in initially for a piercing, is to give you enough information and education that you can make a educated decision, that you really know what you're getting yourself into, what your best options are, and whether or not this is a good idea. And sometimes people kind of get a little grumpy about me giving them a consultation, and I always take it with a grain of salt because I'd much rather take the time to do that than not do it. And now you know. So I hope you found this informative. I hope it kind of gave you kind of an inside look. If it popped up some questions in your head and you want to ask them, leave a comment. I'm happy to answer questions and follow-up questions. If you disagree with me, that's the same thing. If you like the video, please give us a thumbs up. Also, if you enjoyed this video and like to watch videos on body art, body piercing and tattooing, please subscribe. We post these on a regular basis, anywhere from 3 to 4 videos a week, and we plan on doing it until we get tired of it. So, until next time, if you're in the Des Moines, Iowa area, I hope to see you for your piercing needs in the future.